Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the third public hearing of the New York City Rent Guidelines Board. This is the third of 4 public hearings that we're holding this year concerning proposed rent adjustments for renewal leases for apartments, lofts, hotels, and other housing units subject to the Rent Stabilization Law of 1969 and the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974. These adjustments will affect renewal leases commencing between October 1st, 2015 through September 30th, 2016. Thank you all so much for coming out in the rain and being here. It's really important to the full board to hear your stories, to hear exactly what you're experiencing so that we can take all of that into account as we make our decisions. So we really appreciate your being here. And again, in the pouring rain and all the challenges that it always takes to come out in the evening to come to a public testimony. So again, thank you all very much. I'll now take roll call. Please respond if present. Harvey Epstein.
Present.
Stephen Flax.
Present.
Shayla Garcia.
Present.
Cecilia Hossa.
Present.
Sabil Rahman.
Present.
Helen Schaub.
Present.
Scott Walsh.
Present.
Sarah Williams Willard.
Present.
And I'm Rachel Godsell, Chair of the Rent Guidelines Board. The next meeting of this board will be June 18th, which will be our final public hearing to comment on the proposed guidelines. This will be held in the courtroom at Brooklyn Borough Hall, 209 Geralman Street in Brooklyn. Directions to this hearing can be found on our website, nycrgb.org, in the About Us section, meeting schedule. You can sign up by calling the Rent Guideline Board offices at 212-385-2934. And as always, there are copies of our meeting schedule here today. The final vote of the Rent Guidelines Board will take place June 24th, beginning at 6 p.m. It will be held at the Great Hall at Cooper Union, 7 East 7th Street at the corner of 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. To board members, please note the drafts of both the hotel and apartment explanatory statements are in your folders. We request your comments on and/or suggested additions to the statements no later than the morning of June 23rd, and revised drafts will be sent to you via email by Friday, June 19th, reflecting additions resulting from the public hearings. Any questions, please see Andrew. Also in your folder is submitted testimony received at the RGB offices via email or mail since our last public hearing. Before we begin our hearing, I would like to read some of the rules and parameters for those who are testifying before the board. So everyone who hopes to testify, I hope you've registered already at the desk. And if you haven't yet registered but would like to testify, please feel free to head on out and see Danielle, who's sitting at the desk. And again, is happy to take your name. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to give his or her testimony. In the event that a large number of people wish to speak, I reserve the right to reduce the allotted speaking time. The clock will beep once when the speaker has 30 seconds left. I will be attempting to alternate between owners and tenants, but this isn't always possible. If there comes a point where there are only owners or only tenants, then obviously we'll just continue along with whomever is present. Speakers must confirm their presence with the RGB staff, as I mentioned, at the registration table located near the entrance of the hall. And again, if you haven't registered at the entrance table, we can't call you. So again, make sure that you've checked in at the registration table. What I'll do is I'll call several names in advance so you'll know if you're up. And if your name is called, this is obviously a small enough room that you don't have to leap up, but just know that you'll be coming to the lectern fairly soon. If you have materials to distribute to the board, please feel free to give them to the RGB staff at the sign-in table near the entrance. And we do ask that you try and stay within the allotted time, although if you have a few comments and your thought hasn't finished, obviously we don't have a sort of hook that will pull anybody away. We have a translator here. I would like to introduce our translator, Sandra Castro, and she'll come up and say a few words.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sandra Castro. I'll be providing interpreting services for the monolingual Spanish speakers. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Sandra Castro. Voy a hacer la traducción en español para los que no hablan inglés. Solo voy a leer unas cosas de lo que acaban de mencionar. El voto final se llevará a cabo el 24 de junio a las 6 de la tarde. Esto va a ser en el Great Hall, en el Salón Grande, en Cooper Union, la 7 East la séptima calle, en la esquina de la 3ª Avenida en Manhattan. Y pues antes de nuestra audiencia me gustaría leer algunas de las reglas para los que quieren testificar ante la Junta. Cada orador tendrá 2 minutos para dar su testimonio. Si muchas personas quieren hablar, la presidenta tiene el derecho de reducir el tiempo. Gracias. para participar. El reloj sonará con un bip una vez señalándole al orador que le quedan 30 segundos. Voy a tratar de alternar al turno entre dueños e inquilinos, pero esto a lo mejor no va a ser siempre posible. También voy a llamar muchos nombres para que sepan que van a pasar, y si usted escucha su nombre, favor de pasar al frente del auditorio. Si usted tiene materiales que quiere distribuir a la Junta, favor de entregárselo al equipo de personal que está en la mesa de enfrente. Favor de tratar de respetar el tiempo que tienen para participar.
So we'll begin with Tony Subraj, and then James Jones, Alan Ye, and Regina Shanley. Mr. Subraj?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Subraj, and I come here as a landlord managing buildings in Queens. The buildings we manage were decrepit when acquired, with hundreds of violations each. They now are significantly improved buildings with zero or close to zero violations. We consider ourselves good landlords of the housing stock we manage. However, these improvements happened only by digging into our own pockets and foregoing any real return on our investments. Though I appreciate the struggles to pay rent by some of our lower income tenants, many of them are in fact well insulated from rent increases through subsidies like Screen Dree, Section 8, HASA, CityLink, CityFEPS, and a homelessness prevention program. Further to this, numerous agencies have been founded to help tenants in their causes with taxpayer dollars, such as Queens Community House, Catholic Charities, Queens Legal Aid, Catholic Migration, TPU, and NILAC. Yet I'm still amazed at how rarely those who find themselves in court can get a one-shot deal where the city will pay back rent if they get themselves in a jam, where the landlords bail out. I know there is little sympathy for landlords in this room, but I'm here to appeal to you to consider an increase this year. The RGB is benchmarking against the price index of operating costs. This index understates the real cost of maintaining a building, leaving out things like capital expenses and legal costs related to difficult tenants. It should be noted that long-term tenants with low rents do not even cover operating costs. Thus, I think it's fair that renewal rates should be at least 5% and 9% respectively. I'd also encourage you to maintain a minimum dollar increase for apartments under $1,000. The age of many buildings dictate costly rehab. For instance, lead paint and asbestos lines much of the housing stock and is very costly to remedy. Furthermore, the plethora of fees, including local law 87, 84, and third-party elevator inspections add tremendous costs. If fare increases are not levied, these older buildings will fall the route of dilapidation and reduce affordable housing stock. The simple truth is that operating costs have gone up. We're simply asking for some reprieve. We believe in providing quality and affordable housing stock, but increases are necessary to provide this. If the board institutes a rent freeze, then they would need to ensure that operating costs are frozen as well.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I ask you a quick question?
Sir, we have a question from the board.
Yeah, sorry. So you said you manage or you own property? Is that what you said?
Own and manage.
You own and manage.
Right.
And these
I
are
personally manage.
You personally manage, but you personally own too?
No, I don't personally own, but...
Because you mentioned a building where there are lots of violations and you got those violations removed.
Correct.
So whoever bought that building knew that they were rent-stabilized tenants in it, and they knew what the rent roll was when they bought it, right?
Correct.
So they knew the condition of the building. I appreciate putting improvements into a building, but we're trying to also maintain affordable housing in the city. So that's a balance we have to look at. So I'm sure you appreciate that, right?
I do appreciate that, but at the same time, it does involve investment to improve those, to correct those violations.
Right, and so you go into these investments with your eyes open.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
James Jones. Then Alan Yee, Regina Shanley, and Gerard Bell.
James not here. James.
He actually is here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
There are 30 professional units at this location. Corporation Counsel, New York City government, advised all residents that this developer was removed from the property because he absconded with $200,000 of New York City government money. I have the name of the Chinese city worker, Borough, Brooklyn, who was shelved into an office closet, told to bend around by a Negro porter developer, give me the bankruptcy papers to sign. Negro porter developer got the full faith, full confidence, full trust, full support of residents. Fact. Residents voted same Negro porter developer away from property 2 different occasions. Favor of court-appointed fiduciary, 111 Center Street, Manhattan. There are 17,000 properties in New York City yearly in this situation. Negro porter Sheckman employee would think he would not be observed or caught. Corporation Counsel indicated the law does not require the Chinese city bankruptcy worker to substantiate the bankruptcy. Corporation Counsel also identified Manhattan District Attorney, whose job it is. Manhattan District Attorney passed the buck to CCRB, Mayor's Board on Police. Jesus Christ dealt with the subject of homosexuality in one of the Gospel, King James Version, Sin of Adam. However, Christ also used the word eunuch. This word evidently refers to men who possess harems, hundreds of women to sex. eunuch is a mutilated male security force for the harem. Owner of harem does not want male security to partake or sex the harem.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Yee?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'm a small owner, small property owner. I moved to this co-op apartment as a rent-stabilized tenant as I first came to America 20 years ago. Then the rent-stabilized was a special for me too. The current tenants have a very good relationship with me, and I take care of them every way I can. In recent years, all the building maintenance fee has gone up. As some of you may already know, co-op maintenance fee around my neighborhoods has risen 10 to 15%. This year, even though oil price dropped significantly, but the fees never reduced. That means we as owner are absorbing all the market price fluctuations. If the law can stabilize the rent, why can't the law stabilize the oil price and property tax and also the utility costs? If the law cannot stabilize all the costs, then the owner will be left behind with all increased expenses. We small owners eventually will have to lose the properties and end up in public housings, which runs a huge deficit. Even the public housing cannot deal with the huge deficits themselves. How do you expect the private owners to cover all extra costs? Will the government bail us out also? My current rent for my apartment is $871.95. And the maintenance fee is $846.80. And the average repair cost is $50 per month. Therefore, I have to chip in $300 per year. And that means I have to work other jobs to pay off this negative. And this law is very unfair for the working class owners, as myself, and I have to work even harder to keep these apartments. If I don't, I have to lose my hard-earned monies. If there's a rent freeze, then I have to lose the apartment due to unable to pay the maintenance fee. All I'm asking is the law should protect everyone, including the owners and tenants, so no one will be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Yee? Mr. Yee?
Mr. Yee, there's a question from the board.
Hi, thank you very much for your testimony. Sorry, I don't know if you can actually hear me. What expenses did you experience, or what have you experienced? How long have you owned this building?
I bought the apartment 2 years ago.
In the 2 years since you've owned it, what have you experienced in terms of operating expense increases, most significant ones?
Because the co-op maintenance fee is increasing every year, and it's more than 10% itself. So there's no way I can keep up with and even now, the rent is negative, like according to the maintenance fee itself. So I have to chip in my own money.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sir, we have additional question.
Yeah. So, just so I'm clear, so you bought one apartment
Yes.
in a co-op that has a rent-stabilized tenant who lives in it,
Yes.
and you bought it with a rent-stabilized tenant in occupancy.
In occupancy.
So
Because
you need-
I was in the building 20 years ago, and I've been living in it because when I came to America, I was a rent-stabilized tenant also.
Well, it's great. I appreciate that.
yeah,
And
so-
I appreciate you bought, just so I'm clear, you
I'm
bought
helping
one,
out, yeah.
You all bought one apartment
Yeah.
in the building.
Yeah.
And so you're saying when you bought it, the cost of the maintenance and your mortgage was more than what the rent-stabilized tenant
No,
was paying?
actually, it was around the same, but as 1 or 2 years later, now it's like,
But 2 years ago, we had
skyrocketed.
4 and 7% increase to the rent guidelines increase.
yeah,
so,
it's for the rent guidelines, but the maintenance fee itself is increasing.
oh, so the
dramatically.
co-op expenses have gone
Yeah,
up.
if you can control the maintenance fee for them, that would be great.
All right, thank you.
We would love that.
Regina Shandley, then Gerard Bell, Leandra Requena, and then Louis Barbanel.
Good afternoon. My name's Regina Shanley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to Queens again. My name's Regina Shanley. I'm a rent-stabilized tenant from Woodside, Sunnyside. I'm grateful to Michael McKee and tenants and neighbors and other tenants and organizations for fighting as long and as strenuously as they did for Scree and Dree. I am a tenant, as I said, a rent-stabilized tenant, and I receive Dree. However, I'm still paying more than 50% of my income in rent. If it weren't for Dree, I don't know where I'd be living, actually, even though my rent is considered low. This isn't unusual. Most people I know are paying more than a third to half of their income in rent. We're not living in luxury, wealthy people living in lots of luxuries, which is what a lot of people think. One working couple I know with 3 children is living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Another family with 3 adults and a baby is living in a 1-bedroom apartment. The rooms are small and they're not luxurious. Young people, married or single, who are renting, who thought they could save to buy a house, can't do it because the rent is so high. People are taking less medicine than has been prescribed because they want to save money. People with pets are scrimping on their own food, their own medical care to take care of their pets and save money. Why are they doing this? Because the rents are too high. Over the past 10 years, rents have gone up considerably more than people's income. Your board is able to help us with solving this problem by keeping the rents either at 0 or frozen, or preferably a rent rollback. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Gerard Bell, Leandra Requena, Louis Barbanel, and then Susan Lippman.
It seems like the New York City administration is at war with small apartment building owners like myself and with tenants. I own a 6-family apartment building in Long Island City. 3 apartments rent for less than $1,000 a month. The administration has created a marketing plan aimed at wooing voters where it positions itself at promoting affordable housing. But just what is affordable housing? There's public housing, better described as deplorable than affordable. Its problem is disinvestment. Not enough money used for upkeep and repairing housing units. In the new luxury apartment building scam, the city grants tax abatements to encourage availability of affordable housing in luxury buildings. But that's based on government subsidies. So our tax dollars are supporting them. Then there's my building. Every year, my property tax value and my property value and taxes go up because of the creation of tax-abated buildings in my area. Sweetheart deals developers have received when they're not paying taxes. I pay taxes on my building and on my rental income, which go to help support government subsidies to public housing, but also to luxury building developers. Last year's 1% rent increase on a $1,000 a month apartment was about $10 a month, which is not enough to pay even for my boiler inspection. A board that won't supply small apartment building owners the money necessary to maintain apartments promotes disinvestment, just like city housing. That's not good for building owners or tenants. There has to be a balance between what small building owners receive and their costs in maintenance and taxes. Consider not charging real estate tax for anyone who provides decent apartments at a reasonable rent. consider not taxing the income generated from those apartments. But don't freeze the revenue of small apartment building owners when you turn around and subsidize rich developers for massive luxury buildings. After all, talking about affordable housing is just a smokescreen for the real issue of income inequality. If the working people's incomes and salaries had grown as much as the 1% in the past 20 years, they'd be able to afford a lot more than just housing.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Leandra Requena. My glasses broken. I can't read so well. Okay. I'm in behalf of the members and non-members for Make the Road New York and for my community, Queens. I lived 30 years in rent stabilization building. I'm in behalf of them because the increase of the rent, it's affecting our pockets. And we have to feed our family. Our salary is not raised so easy. It's very hard to get that $15 we're supposed to have a decent way to live. And some members, they're living on rent stabilization, they have to share their apartments. And we have stories every day about people who have paid just for rooms $600. But because the cost of the life, everything is very high, it didn't enough for the working families. And I just hear that some tenants who was working in rent stabilization, and then they get the property. That's right. We have to focus in the way to be even for all of the people, but thinking in the working families, how many people they have low salary and they affect a lot if you increase the rent. Last year was a relief because we get something few, but now we want to get less because the salary is the same. It's no higher than the salary. It will be $15. It doesn't enough, but it's something else. But I pray, I pray that you have the conscience and to listen and to see the reality about the salary of the people, the working people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barbanel, then Susan Lippman, Eva Malice, and Mohammed Hussein.
Hello, my name is Lou Barbanel from Barbary Rose Management. We manage apartments in Queens, Brooklyn, and Northern Manhattan. I've testified many times in front of the Rent Guidelines Board, and instead of going into particular detail, I would like to go into an interesting story, a book written, The Great Rent Wars, written 2 years ago by historian Robert Fogelson, and the book covers the original rent regulations in New York City. It goes into detail how the original rent scheme was actually a product of World War I. In World War I, they had a scarcity of supplies due to the war effort. Everything was pushed towards the war effort, classic supply and demand. They lost housing. Housing rents went crazy, and the state passed the first rent regulation laws that lasted for 9 years until 1929. Interestingly enough, they didn't make a board like this. They left it to local judges. So you ended up with all sorts of inequity at each local level, whether the judge was pro-landlord or pro-tenant. What solved this problem? Of course, it was, again, supply and demand. The 1920s boomed, increased housing supply to the point when the law expired, they allowed rent regulation to end. We face the same problems today. More regulation will not help the city and will not give more housing for people who need it. It will just make the housing more expensive, believe it or not. I know it's counterintuitive, but that's how it works. When you deregulate, you get more opportunities. People will invest and build more housing. We've seen this work. We saw it work in Massachusetts where they deregulated. We've seen it work also in the airlines when they deregulated. And we've seen it work on a national level in the Soviet Union. I would like to humbly ask that the board give the highest possible increase that they're considering for the 1- and 2-year renewals. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And it's an interesting book.
My name is Susan Littman. I'm a longtime rent-stabilized tenant. I also receive SCREE and pay almost 50% of my income for rent, and that is a lot less than a lot of other people. And I have to disagree with this man because from my studies in places where rent has been deregulated, people were really displaced and hurting more and more and more, and it did not reduce the cost of housing. I think that's a big lie. I wasn't planning to say that, but I think it's important. I think the only equitable solution is a rent freeze, particularly the owners of multi-dwelling units, many of whom own many, and even the Rent Guidelines Board I've seen has said the increases have gone down, and after there have been so many substantial increases hurting tenants, I think, again, a rent rollback, significant one, and also bringing back regulations to everyone who's already been deregulated, I think needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Eva Malice, then Mohammed Hussein, Nada Wagner, and Maria Del Carmen Cruz.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
My name is Eva Malice, and I'm an owner and operator of buildings in Astoria, Queens. My family has owned and managed properties in Astoria for over 50 years. We take pride in our management. I'm here to strongly urge the board to vote for equitable rent increases for 1- and 2-year rent-stabilized leases. I recently performed a simple calculation for one building. I computed the operating costs per room for 2014. This calculation did not include the $92,000 costs of converting my boiler from number 6 oil to gas. It did not include the $150,000 cost of modernizing the elevator, nor did it include the installation of the backflow preventer. It is my belief that each rent-stabilized tenant must share in the cost of running the building, and that includes sharing the increases in real estate taxes and water, which are mandated by the city. My real estate taxes alone increased by 9.5%. That's 9.5% of a very large tax number. This is not political rhetoric. This is economic good sense. Now I'd like to share with you the profile of some of our rent-stabilized tenants. There's a young man in his mid-40s who's been occupying a 3-room apartment for over 15 years. His current rent is $644. Based on my calculation, he is only covering 78% of the total operating share. This gentleman resides in Astoria when he's not shuttling back and forth to his second home in Cyprus. He just informed me he will be in Cyprus for 3 months this summer, where he will be on vacation. Or there are the 4 adults, 2 parents, and 2 grown children occupying a 4-room apartment. Their rent is $1,037, and it's not covering its fair share of operating expenses either. Everyone is gainfully employed and spending many weekends in their single-family residence in upstate New York. There are many apartments that are not paying their fair share. Let's be perfectly honest. They are being subsidized by a small number of unregulated apartments and the landlord. Our buildings are aging. The government mandates continue to increase our expenses. Does the board really believe a 1% increase on a $600 rent is really very fair? It isn't good public policy to favor the few who won the rent-stabilized lottery while the market rents have to cover more than their fair share of the operating expenses. These are average New Yorkers, too. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mohammed Hussain, and I'm an immigrant from Bangladesh, and I'm also an active member of Chaya. Since I moved from my native country to the United States, I have been living first in Elmhurst, now in Jackson Heights, Queens. My family consists of my 2 beautiful children and my lovely wife. We live in an apartment with 1 household income. Both of my children were born here, and they are the future of the United States. And older one goes to 7th grade, and young one goes to 7th. 80% of my income goes to pay my monthly rent. For the last 4 years, my rent increased a total of $186.90 monthly. After working 2 years, my pay increased 35 cents an hourly basis. Here is the little math based on the last 4 years' rent increase. First year, rent increased 3.75%, total monthly $62.81, no pay increase. Second year, rent increased 2%, total monthly $34.76, no pay increase. Third year, rent increase 4%, total monthly $70.90, no pay increase. Fourth year, rent increase 1%, total monthly $18.61, pay increase 35 cents per hour basis, total monthly $56 before tax. And there will be no pay increase this year. So, therefore, my two children, underage school-going children, have given up many daily necessities. So please, I urge gentlemen, please roll back rent, and I really thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Nada Wagner, then Maria del Carmen Cruz, then Shayla Lamia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Ma'am, can you speak into the mic? Thank you so much.
My name is Nada Wagner. I'm a senior citizen, a working senior citizen. I work 6 days a week in order to keep this building. I have 4 tenants. One pays $770 a month. The other one pays $836.07 a month. The third one pays $826, and the fourth one $692.86. The one who pays $692.86 just asked me to have her apartment painted from A to Z. In order to paint she has a 5-room apartment plus the bathroom. It's going to be $1,850, the cheapest I could get. So the money that I get from this building does not pay for the building. Today I received the real estate bill. Last year was $10,800. This year it's $11,998. So the water went up, the sewer, the heat. Okay, it didn't go up as much as before, but these are old people. They need heat. They complain every day. And the first thing that I hear, if I have it on 72 in the hallway, is we're going to call 311 housing. Housing is going to come, and housing wants me to put it up to 78. And nobody gives more money. Another thing, what I wanted to say is, my legal bill last year was $7,500 because one of the tenants brought in her son, who goes to court every day with little things, little complaints, and he's being heard because he has nothing better to do. He doesn't work, neither does his mother, and they go to court, and I have to pay the legal bills in order to hear them. He's requesting that in order to bring all his furniture and all his personal things from the apartment where he's been evicted for not paying rent for 8 months to put it into the basement. And I said he cannot do that because the insurance company will not allow it, and I will not allow it because the basement will be full with his furniture. So that has been going on, and I have to pay the legal bills for that.
Ms. Wagner, if you could summarize, your time is up.
Pardon me?
If you could summarize and end, your time is up.
Summarize it, yes. Okay. The repairs last year was $7,176. Insurance, $4,196.13. Legal, $7,500. Real estate bill, $11,998.
Ma'am, I think you've shared these numbers with us, and we do appreciate your testimony.
Yes. Cleaning, if I can't afford to pay somebody to clean, I clean and I put the garbage out. And I think it's unfair. I mean, if I can work at my age, a lot of other people can work.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wagner. There actually is one question from the board. If you could give us 1 sec.
Yeah, ma'am, I just had a quick question. You said you own 4 rent-stabilized apartments in your building?
6.
It's a 6-unit building?
Yes.
And 4 of them are rent-stabilized?
They're all stabilized.
But you only mentioned the...
4 are under 800. One is 692. The other
What
one
are the other 2?
The other, one is 1,200 and one is 1,211.
And you're saying you're not making, have you applied for a hardship increase at HCR?
I'm not going to get it, sir.
What?
It's just a song and a dance if I go there, and nothing.
You know, we ask tenants all the time, you know, you need help, you apply for SCREE or DREE. You ask tenants all the time, you need help, apply to Section 8. You need to tell tenants, you need a one-shot deal, I'll apply to that. I'm not sure what the hardship would be to apply if you feel like you need government assistance.
I have applied. I can't get it.
All right, well, thank you then.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Maria del Carmen Cruz. I am a tenant. I come with the association Shaya because I represent my building because we had a problem with our landlord that they raised our rent at 10% because they did work in the building. First of all, I want to say one thing. I hear a lot of people, tenants, and a lot of small landlords. I understand the small landlord can have problems because they have little buildings. But you have to understand, I love numbers. And I make $45,000 a year. I pay my rent 2.5 weeks of my work days is for rent. Then the other week and a half is transportation, food, clothing, and everything else, the bills. And you have to understand one thing. Every month, I go through the same thing. And I work. And I'm supposed to be making okay money because I take home $500 cash where the taxes pay. But I'm going to tell you something. The $2,000 that I take home is not enough. The food is very expensive. I have 4 children. 2 of them living at home with me because they cannot afford to get an apartment. I'm just looking for them and try to help them to get through, to save a little money so they can get their own apartment. But it's so difficult because the apartments are going for $1,800, $1,600, $1,700. My kids cannot afford that kind of rent. I've been paying now $1,200, but I live in this building for the last 30 years. What I want to say is this. If really, where are we going to get the money if the rent keep increasing? More money. From where? What are we supposed to go? The middle class people, where are we supposed to go for real? Give us numbers. The landlord make a lot of money. They do. In my building, there's 120 families, and the least they pay is $875. So you're talking that the landlord make on rent every week, at least every month I'm talking about, $150,000. Where that money go? And you're telling me you cannot afford, and if you're going to clean the building or do something in the building, it's a big problem because you are a landlord. You only want to put such a little into the building that is falling apart. So you got a lot of landlords like this. You have to help the people too. I understand the landlords, they have a small building, they are suffering, and I feel sorry for them because they have the right to be suffering, but the big corporations are the one pushing the city to increase and increase and increase. You know why? Because they got so much money. They don't care. They are the slum landlords. They want it all for them, nothing for you. And believe me, they don't care about us, the tenants. I'm sorry, I know I overpassed the time. And it's too short. You should have given me another turn.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Shayla Lamia, yes. Joel Ponder, Adam Sabella, and then Maxine Zeifman.
Good evening. My name is Shayla Lamia, a property manager representing owners whose building is in Jackson Heights, Queens. We provide 106 families affordable apartments. Our building is 93 years old, and we have owned it for 71 years, which is not very common in family-owned rental property. We pride ourselves on trying to maintain a good building. My grandfather used to say, if you own property, you take care of it, or you do not own property. However, given the rising cost of repairs and operations, and along with past low rent increases, it is harder to be able to afford to maintain a good building. So far this year, in addition to normal repairs, we have incurred the following expenses. Repaired emergency gas problems to 30 apartments and to the boiler at a cost of $20,000. Repaired 2 elevators at a cost of $60,000. Lead paint abatement at a cost of $20,000. Next week, construction will commence for a retaining wall, which spans 200 feet long by 11 feet high, at an estimated cost of $317,000. These above repair costs do not qualify for MCI or J51 benefits and are in addition to normal operating expenses. As a result, we have incurred tremendous losses. The price index of operating costs do not take the above repair cost into account when calculating building operating expenses. Over the past year, it has become harder for us to maintain our building due to the rising escalating costs such as real estate taxes, utilities, insurance, water and sewer charges, required maintenance, and payroll for building staff. We have many long-term families in our building whose rents are low and do not cover operating costs and all repairs. But as owners, we do our best to maintain a good building despite past low annual rent increases. We are asking the board for a fair rental increase of 5% for a one-year lease and 9% for a two-year lease, and that there be no rent freeze. If we do not receive fair rental increases, then we will not be able to keep our building operating or be able to continue to provide a proper level of services to the families who live there. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Joel Ponder, then Adam Sabella, Maxine Zeifman, and Kevin Duane.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Ponder. I'm representing tenants at Queens Community House. We support many seniors, regular families, and all of them have seen a big problem with the rent increases. Many of the persons who are going to apply for senior citizen do not have enough money to afford it. Therefore, they have to get roommates. Many of other families have to put more people in the family to keep afford the units. Rent increase contribute to the destabilization of many units in New York, and we know that for a fact. All the programs such as CRE, DRE, FEPS City are paid by the city, so the landlords and management is getting the money. I'm right now organizing a building in Richmond Hills. This building have almost 15 issues with HPD. The landlord having answered the phone to the tenants. They currently don't have a super in the building. The building is falling apart. So think about it when you have those increases. Are they helping the landlord or are they helping the tenants? Instead of increasing the rent, you should decrease the rent and keep rent stabilization alive.
Thank you, sir. Adam Sabella, Maxine Zeifman, Kevin Duane, then Rassel Rahman.
Thank you for the time. My wife and I have owned a 6-family house in Queens for 10 years. During that time, I've never felt compelled to attend a rent guidelines hearing because I've always felt that both the process and the results were fair for all parties involved. However, last year's 1% increase and this year's proposed rent freeze leave me feeling quite the opposite. My wife and I have always felt strongly about maintaining our building and have accordingly continued to reinvest cash flow back into the property. The result has been a well-functioning building and, more importantly, happy tenants with whom I have wonderful relationships. I respectfully ask that the Rent Guidelines Board consider that reasonable annual rent increases are absolutely required to keep up with the costs of operating and maintaining buildings. Year over year, my operating costs have increased 15%, led by substantial increases in repairs, water, real estate taxes, and insurance. On top of these increases in operating costs, owners also have periodic and sometimes quite material capital expenditures which must be considered into your analysis. For example, this year, after some very difficult winters, I had to rebuild the front steps to my building at a cost of $16,000. Again, this is on top of the 15% increase in operating expenses. This was a big financial blow, but one that was necessary so that the tenants can safely enter and exit the building each and every day. Freezing rents will make it difficult, if not impossible, for owners to make required repairs on their buildings. So please, we request a reasonable rent increase so that we can continue to provide tenants with homes that they are proud of and buildings that we're proud to own. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Maxine Zeifman, Kevin Duane, Rasal Rahman, and Marilyn Percy.
My name is Maxine Zeifman, and I want to say I appreciate what the hard-working board has to do in this case. But I want to make a point that I don't think is being made. That is that real estate to New York State is what oil is to Texas. It is $1 trillion lobby that's bought the legislature and that is very, very profitable. Now, all we hear in these testimonies are tiny owners that, as our tenant representative says, not one of them last year, I know this from someone in legal aid, has asked for a hardship allowance. But the point is that the rent in New York City is one of the 6 most expensive in the country. The other 5 are California. This is not a bad place to be a landlord. And most landlords have buildings in which mine was rent stabilized. In 1972, I moved in on somebody else's rent stabilization. The landlords have 80% of the building is either co-op or it is market value. So we're not talking just small landlords. We're saying they're doing better than just fine. You know, my rent went up from 700 to 26. But the main thing I care about is New York City is great because of rent stabilization. We have the academics and the scientists and the researchers, and we have the people in creative arts. We need affordable housing. We don't need a city that is just luxury. 90-floor apartments. The real estate lobby has 94-story apartments that are just places for billionaires to place their money. They have so much money. This city needs, that's why it's great, because of its working class and because of its middle class. Now, I was a clinician, a healthcare provider, but I did medical research, and I can tell you I know a whole group of researchers that make $36,000 net a year at Columbia, why heart transplants don't take, and at Rockefeller Institute on cancers, and 10 years later they're still making 36. And we have that. The city needs that diversity of the middle class and this good working class.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Kevin Duane, then Rasal Rahman, Marilyn Percy, then Martha Flores Vasquez.
As an addendum to that woman, those other cities that are so expensive, they also are rent controlled. So just look at San Francisco, Dallas; those are all the same. So, members of the board, public, if a financial institution called you up saying, "Have I got an investment for you?" Not only might you not get a whopping 1 or 2% increase per year for your return, but your investment will be subject to whimsical raises and higher property taxes, increased water taxes, which are unfairly charged for the entire structure, not fairly appropriated individually like gas and electric fees, along with additional unexpected expenses due to your purchasing an old declining structure whose facilities may be subject to costly repairs and replacement at any time. How many of us would jump on that gravy train? A halfway decent money market fund would provide a better return. We're investors, self-starters, just like the people the media celebrates and the government supports for creating startups and opening new businesses. But we receive none of the support, subsidies, tax incentives, or low-cost land deals. We are an easy scapegoat by officials who refuse to increase the minimum wage or provide an equitable tax structure. I, for one, look forward to the day when this board extends its powers and is able to stroll into supermarkets, restaurants, professional services, and all businesses and industries and tells them that their prices will now be regulated by a phantom price index. But I won't hold my breath for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drain.